Welcome from the Music City Center, Nashville, Tennessee. We're here at the EMS World Expo, the largest EMS dedicated event in the world. This is EMS World Presents Stories from Expo. Your story continues here.
Hi, I'm Aaron Gutzman. I'm here with EMS Garage at EMS World Expo in Nashville. I'm talking with Edward Oliphant, and I think one of the scariest things about test taking is you don't know how you're going to do sometimes. So it would really be nice if you had some kind of predictor going into the test that would tell you whether or not you're going to pass it.
Yeah, and so I'm an EMT instructor. I teach EMT classes, and one of the things I want to look for when I start a semester is which students are likely to succeed on that final test, who's set up for success, and who may need a little extra help. So I started off in February at the FISDAP Research Summit, and I produced 3 abstracts looking into what, from the beginning of the semester, can we know about a student that's going to predict their performance at the end of the semester on a big final exam. And we found 3 findings that were all very intuitive, but also very interesting. So finding number 1 is that students who took a pretest measuring prior knowledge, so biology, mathematics, medical terminology, anatomy, physiology, those all correlated with better performance on that final exam. So no big surprise there, but it is good to know that with the exception of biology, all of those were pretty good predictors of your final exam scores. Additionally, we looked at, a part of that pretest was a general self-efficacy. So that's a measurement of your self-confidence, your belief that I can push through adversity and achieve a goal once I set my mind to it. And unsurprisingly, students who performed, who were above median on GSE scores also performed better on that final exam. The last piece of the research we did looked at student age. So we had students, about 26,000 students who had taken that FISDAP final exam and who had entered an age into the FISDAP database. And so we had students as young as 14 and as old as 90. And when we charted out student performance across age, we found that every year below age 25, those students tended to do worse and worse and worse on that exam. And then students above 25, the curve flattens out and students' performance seems to not depend on age after that point. So this is really helpful for student advisors in the college setting or student instructors who are looking and trying to say, how do I get the right students into my class? How do I get the students who are coming in prepared? And then once they're in there, how do I keep them? How do I make sure that these students who start my class, finish my class successfully at the end of the semester? And what we find is that if we can help our students be psychologically resilient, and if our students come in with a little bit of prior knowledge or a little bit of life experience, they're likely to do better. And even if the students, these predictors aren't in the student's favor, this simply means for me, I am identified you, I've got you tagged. So I call it smart triage. The idea that we're going to triage our students at the beginning of the semester. We'll put our red tags on students who are likely to need some extra support, some extra resources. If you're 35 and you've got a prior degree in biology and you've got very great self-confidence, then hey, great, you get a green tag. I'm assuming that you're gonna be able to do pretty well in this class. But if you're 18, fresh out of high school, no prior medical or mathematical knowledge, and median self-efficacy, then I'm like, okay, I need to keep an eye on you. I need to make sure that you get all the resources you need to be successful. So it's really about the instructor at the beginning of class identifying who's going to need that support so that we can start with one number and end with the same number of successful students.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's excellent. Have you any plans to initiate a sort of project and study whether or not your teaching style, so let's say you identify these people, do you have a way to, or any plan to monitor success on your teaching? Does that make sense? How are you going to use that information, and then how are you going to track to see if you're doing that right?
Yes, yeah, okay. Absolutely. There's a lot of opportunities here. So the simplest thing, right, is I think that everybody should be doing some sort of pretest when students come in. Okay. Just figuring out where your students are at. If you're using a group model where you assign students to groups to do support within the group, that's really great because you can balance out your groups. You can say we've got some really strong students over here with a lot of prior knowledge. We've got some more mature students over here, and let's balance these groups out and make sure that we've got even strengths across all those groups. So that's step one. Is I just want to advise anybody who's doing EMS instruction to consider a pre-test and a pre-evaluation, and using that to balance out your groups and identify students who may need extra help. The next thing though is the general self-efficacy is something that is theoretically malleable. So my student comes in at age 18, they're 18, and my student didn't take any prior medical classes, they don't have that prior knowledge. That's okay, we can't change that. But can we find and employ teaching techniques that reinforce a student's sense of self-efficacy, so that when they have a bad test result, instead of that crushing their spirit and leading to a path of attrition, can we reinforce those students' sense of their ability to overcome, and can our teaching techniques actually support that self-efficacy so that that can actually change over the semester?
Yeah.
And that's something I haven't looked into, but honestly, that would be huge, right? How do I take a student who might be in danger of not being successful with the class, and can my teaching techniques actually support that student in improving their self-confidence, their self-efficacy, and therefore improving their outcomes?
Sure.
I think that'd be really interesting stuff to look into.
That would be very interesting. And it's interesting too, yeah, I suppose you can't really do much about age or prior knowledge, but how do you attack the term, what is the term you used?
Self-efficacy.
Self-efficacy and psychological resilience. Great, yeah, that's really interesting.
Thank you, thank you.
Is that you said you had 3 posters, are all those on that same topic?
Yes, so
Okay.
we did all the research, and I was just really looking at anything I could correlate with that final performance on the final exam. And when we started write up the abstract, my research partners and I found, I was like, we've got so much here, really, this is 3 separate abstracts. So we did one that was just the age data.
Okay.
We did another one that was the GSE, the general self-efficacy scores, and then another one that was prior knowledge.
Did you find one had a stronger correlation, or are they all tied equally?
I would say that the age effect is the biggest.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, oh gosh, I don't want to quote it because I'd be off, but I seem to remember the age being the biggest effect, and I think the general self-efficacy being the most modest effect, with the knowledge falling in the middle.
Sure. Okay.
And this could be useful too.
That's not terribly surprising, I guess. With age comes wisdom.
Yeah, and actually that's the title of the abstract,
Oh,
is with age comes wisdom, question mark. But what we often find is there are some real cognitive challenges to an EMT course. It's a lot of information in a very short period of time, and for some people they're starting from zero when it comes to this kind of knowledge. But what's even more challenging for these courses, right, is just the stressors it puts on you on a personal level. It's a lot of classwork. For some of these folks, they're being put in certain types of stressful situations they've never been in before. The school, I'm assigning 100 pages of reading per week. We're doing tests every 2 weeks. Students are expected to schedule their own clinicals and then attend those clinicals. It's a huge workload, and that's where I think that age can really come into play. Someone who's been out of high school for a while and has lived life has some more of those lifetime coping skills that may help them with those challenges. Whereas cognitively, I think an 18-year-old can put all of that information in their brain. It's really about juggling all of these things. And I know personally for me, it took me to fall flat on my face a few times to learn some of those life lessons about study habits.
I think there's no avoiding that for a lot of people. Sometimes you got to hit the bottom.
Yeah, and another thing that we're seeing, which I think makes this research very interesting, is a proliferation of EMT classes in high school. So there are folks who are basically trying to get you out of high school with an EMT basic license. And I think that that's great.
It's good general knowledge to have, for sure.
I love this profession, and I am all for grabbing folks young and preparing them for the next generation of EMS, to be the next generation of EMS providers. So if we know that their age is going to be a factor, that means that let's design those courses very thoughtfully. Maybe we spread that instruction out over a longer time than we would do in the college environment, and let's make sure that we give those students every chance for success as well. So by no means should any of this be interpreted to say we want to keep anybody out. I'm not trying to establish barriers here. I really just want to identify needs.
Okay. Great. Well, that's very intuitive, very interesting information. I'm going to get a chance, hopefully, to come hear you speak, give the long version. I appreciate you coming by and talking to me today.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah.